Good morning, one and all, and it's exciting to be here today at our first virtual Imagine conference. My name is Sophie Dennett. I am from Westcon-Comstor. I'm the product manager for Veritas, and I'm absolutely thrilled to introduce Brianna and Anthony of Veritas Solutions to you all. Brianna and Anthony are addressing us live from the US, Brianna in Santa Clara and Anthony in Orlando. Thank you so much to them for giving up their evenings to be with us. Brianna and Anthony will be giving us the lowdown on the truth in your cloud data. Just a couple of housekeeping points. Please may you pop any questions you have in the Q&A, and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. And watch out for the poll question. Also, may I remind you that there will be some survey questions which will automatically populate at the end of the session. Please would you answer these for me, as your responses are valued and you will get some Imagine points. So, without further ado, let's get started. Over to you, Brianna and Anthony.
Hi, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us. And thanks, Sophie, for that awesome introduction. Like she said, my name is Brianna Fisher. I work on the Cloud Solutions Marketing team here at Veritas. Like Sophie mentioned, we're also joined by Anthony Cusimano, my awesome teammate. Anthony, go ahead and say hello.
Hello. Hi there, everyone. Good
and
to be here.
Today we're going to be talking about all things truth in cloud. But before we dive into the research, we wanted to talk a little bit about who we are and why we're speaking to you today. So I know we only have 20 minutes for this session, so we'll keep it moving fairly quickly. But again, like Sophie said, if you do have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A box. All right, so who is Veritas? At Veritas, we believe there are three main things that come to data management, enterprise data management: availability, protection, and insight. When we talk about availability, we're talking about applications that are always available and 24/7 business continuity. When we're talking about protection, we're talking about end-to-end enterprise-wide data protection and resiliency and being able to do granular at-scale recovery. When we're talking about insights, we're talking about insight into your data as well as your infrastructure to be able to do things like cost and compliance optimization. When you combine availability, protection, and insights, you get the power of the Veritas Enterprise Data Services platform. And if you'll notice, all three of those icons formed into one super powerful icon that makes up the Veritas Enterprise Data Services platform, which supports over 800 plus data sources, 1,400 plus storage targets, 60 plus clouds, and every deployment model possible. Anthony, I think you'd agree with me that it's a very extensible platform. So regardless of what you have going on in your environment, Veritas has you covered.
That's absolutely correct.
Right.
I would agree.
Yes. And with that, let's dive directly into the report. Oh, sorry, I forgot. We have a poll question. So before we dive into the report, please take a second to answer this poll question. Are you currently locked into your cloud vendor? Now, Anthony, why are we asking them this poll question? Why is this important?
Well, it's important to think about what options you have when you think about the cloud and how there are, there's obviously the big three, but there's dozens of other vendors out there. I think a lot of times we'll pick one and we'll stick with it, but it might not be the one
Absolutely.
that is best fit for the company, best fit for the users. We're just curious if you feel that you are locked in and then you cannot go anywhere else, or if you have the freedom to go cloud to cloud, multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, what have you.
Absolutely. And often we're seeing that hybrid multi-cloud environments are becoming ever more popular. People want to take advantage of multiple clouds, but sometimes feel like they can't do to vendor lock-in. So I'm curious to know what our audience thinks regarding this poll question.
Yes, and your answers will directly help us to help you. A lot of the content we're presenting today is directly tied to these results, so we can definitely shift it based on the kind of responses you give us.
Absolutely. All right, so interestingly enough, we had 7% that said yes and 23% that said no, and then 70% that did not answer. So for those of you who did answer, thank you so much for participating. Anthony, what does this mean? 23% are saying no. I think that's good.
Well, yeah, that is good. So we had a lot less yes than no. So that means that they're not locked in. Mm-hmm. And then the big 70, either they don't know if they're locked in or not, or they haven't figured it out yet, which is totally fine. We'll try to keep the content and presentation as open as we can, but we will keep in mind that a good majority of you do feel that you have the freedom to move around, which is important.
Very key when talking about a hybrid multi-cloud strategy. All right, Absolutely. Let's dive into the heart of the report. Back in 2019, we partnered with Cascade Insights to run our Truth in Cloud report that included over 1,600 cloud architects and administrators across 15 countries. So really, we tried to get a lot of people involved across a lot of different countries to get some information about how people are using the cloud, some myths that we can debunk, and where sort of the trends in cloud are going. So starting off with our first sort of stat that we want to go over, which is 70% of enterprises will have mostly public cloud infrastructure. Now, I know this graph is kind of a lot. There's a lot of cool colors going on. But basically, we asked, where is the current state of your IT infrastructure, and where is your desired cloud end state? And I think we want to direct your attention to the middle of the graph here, where we're talking about having half of your infrastructure in public cloud and half on-prem, and then a mostly public cloud infrastructure. So Anthony, talk to me about our findings. Why is this important, and why should people care?
Yeah, so again, like Brianna said, we interviewed 1,500 different cloud architects specifically for this data. So we were already talking to people who were using cloud, making the most of it. And this was the first question that we asked because we really wanted to understand what their data was comprised of and how they were using it specifically in the cloud. Now, the reason we highlight this middle portion here, about half in public, half on-prem, or mostly public, is to just kind of highlight that the majority of folks today, and I would assume a lot of you on the line as well, are falling into that hybrid cloud model that you even mentioned earlier, Brianna. It's crucially important that we consider that, you know, the on-premises infrastructure isn't really going anywhere. And like you said, that you're not locked into the cloud, or a lot of you don't feel that you're locked into the cloud. Mobility is key, and really being able to maximize that mobility and do the most with the data in multiple locations. That's really how you maximize your ability to leverage these cloud vendors.
Couldn't agree with you more. And also, one quick thing to note, in a recent Gartner survey of public cloud users, 81% of respondents actually said they're working with 2 or more providers. So again, going back off of what Anthony said, hybrid multi-cloud infrastructures are becoming increasingly popular. All right, let's talk about downtime, something nobody wants to talk about, right? Downtime is a bad word in our industry. We don't want it to happen. We need uptime. So 53% of our respondents of cloud architects and admins said they have uptime targets of 99.99% or greater. That's 4 nines of availability. Now, Anthony and I were talking, and we're saying, okay, well, what about that 0.01% of downtime? What would that mean to you? Think about your industry and your vertical and what you do. So 0.01% of downtime equates to roughly 53 minutes. Now, depending on what you do, depending on your applications and your workloads, 53 minutes could be not that big of a deal. But depending on your vertical, if you're in banking or healthcare, if you have mission-critical applications that cannot experience downtime, this could be huge. So we want to walk you through just very quickly an example of a cloud service provider outage that wasn't so great for some of their customers. So Anthony, I'm going to go ahead and advance the slides, and I'll have you talk through the story. Yeah. So really, in order to recover 1% of what went down, it took 3 hours. And for some customers, it took 4 days. So Anthony, walk me through what happened. This does not sound like a good situation.
Yeah, and we're not going to point fingers and say who it was or anything like that, but a cloud service provider did go down, and like the slide said, it was only really down for 3 hours, and the downtime was actually caused by network inconsistencies. So the data center that was housing all of the data wasn't even technically off. It wasn't like lightning struck and there's a power outage. It was actually some kind of network confuddlery that caused some sporadic disconnects on the machines themselves without actually powering them down. This is actually worse than what would have happened had they just had a regular power on and off or power goes out, because it left all of the machines, all the virtual machines that were running inside this cloud environment. I think there was, some 60,000 something machines, basically in a non-connected, non-able to speak to each other state as they semi came back online. And what ended up happening was we actually talked to some of the customers of this cloud service provider, and what happened, it took them up to 4 days to get back to a functional state. And the way they got back was by restoring snapshots, because their instances were so discombobulated. There was no way to actually get them communicating and functioning the way they were before the network outage had happened. So it was 4 days of manually restoring snapshots they had taken inside that platform, which is just unbelievable. And also it sounds like a nightmare that I wouldn't want to deal with.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds awful. All right, so moving on from downtime, let's talk about recovery time. So this specific question was around How are you able to recover today? And what is your desired recoverable time? And also, it's your RTO versus does it actually work? So you see on the one hand of the graph with 1, 3, and 5 years, there really isn't a discrepancy between the time they can recover today versus their desirable recoverable time. Where we're seeing some problems is on this other side of the graph with 10 years and beyond. So Anthony, talk to me a little bit about why this is important and why there's such a huge difference from one side of the graph to the other.
I think there's two primary reasons, and we even saw some of this in the interviews we conducted with the people we surveyed for this. The first is just personnel and people. It's very hard to keep someone in a role for that span of 10 years where they can manage and maintain that data lifecycle. We backed this thing up on May 31st, 1999. We were going to keep it backed up till 2009, and then till 2019, and then 29. It's really hard to just maintain that level of cohesivity and connectivity inside of an organization that's constantly changing people. But the second thing is it costs a lot of money. The storage itself of being able to house this data, especially dispersed and differentiated backup data as the data changes, you have to keep more and more copies of it over time. It just becomes unreasonable and unwieldy unless you have a kind of technology that is really suited for and targeting keeping that data around long term, but maximizing the amount of storage you have and reducing that footprint from the data perspective.
Absolutely. And the other thing we wanted to mention here when it comes to RTO and being able to recover, does it actually work? Have you rehearsed that strategy? Do you know that when it comes time to hit that big red button and fail over and recover, you're actually able to do so? I think that's huge. And you need to make sure that when that time does come, you're able to actually follow through with that strategy that you have in place.
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, recovery is always the biggest deal, and no one thinks about it. They only think about, we're going to keep this thing around for 10 years, but trying to recover 10-year-old data is almost an impossible feat.
Yep, exactly. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about responsibilities in the cloud. This is a very important delineation to make. So interestingly enough, we actually ran a Truth in Cloud report back in 2017, and 41% of respondents believed that it was the cloud service provider's responsibility to back up cloud data. Now, interestingly enough, we ran the report again in 2019, and that number jumped significantly. Anthony, talk to me a little bit. This is crazy, right? We jumped from 41% to 85%. What are your thoughts here?
This is crazy, and there's a little bit of, we think, a misconception here too. When we first asked if we thought the cloud providers were responsible for backing up their data, there was very little knowledge at the time of what was actually on the end user's responsibility versus what was the CSP in 2017. So, it was a fairly even split. People just didn't know. What we've seen happen now is I think there's a false sense of confidence with cloud adoption. So out of our 1,500 respondents, over 1,000 of them said our cloud service provider is actively backing up our data, which is just not true. And we found that it's a little bit of a misplaced confidence, but also just a misunderstanding of what cloud vendors actually offer. When they say uptime, that doesn't mean that they're going to keep your business up. That means they're going to keep their business up, and it's your responsibility to keep your business running inside their infrastructures. So it's a misconception, and I think that's why we've seen such a jump in folks that actually think that they are completely protected when they're not.
Yep. It's a very important delineation to make between our responsibility and our CSP's responsibility.
Absolutely.
All right, let's talk money, Mr. Cusimano. Backup budgets are increasing. In fact, 90% of our respondents said they have some form of backup budget increase. Let's talk about why that is. In a world where budgets seem to be decreasing constantly, we have a peak here, and then we have our 3% over on this side of the graph. Talk to me a little bit about what the bell curve means, and then this 3% that apparently has a 70% budget increase coming their way. What are we talking about here?
Well, it's very interesting because even on the last slide, we implied that, people think their cloud workloads are automatically protected. Yet the CTOs, the CIOs, they're definitely increasing budgets specifically around protection and recovery. And the reason we think that is specifically because there's just so much data that needs to be protected. If we think back to one of that first data points we showed, where it was over 70% of the people we interviewed were in a hybrid or multi-cloud state, they still have to have some kind of traditional protection for their on-prem, their physical, their containers, everything that is running outside of the cloud, or the applications that are running in the cloud, or the things that just don't get protected through that sort of cloud native misconception that's going on. they have to have a solution that is robust enough to handle all of those workloads. And ideally, it's a single solution that can seamlessly and simultaneously be able to protect everything.
Absolutely. All right, I know we have a lot of content. We're trying to get through it super quick.
Yep.
So moving right along, what matters most when it comes to a cloud backup solution? We're talking scalability, trust, reputation of reliability, robust set of APIs, and a centralized monitoring and analytics system. Now, Anthony, quickly talk to me about these last two. I know the first two are pretty self-explanatory. Why do we care about APIs, and why do we care about centralizing everything?
So again, it really falls into, we'll start with the monitoring first. Just like I said for the previous slide, when you have so much stuff, when there's so much heterogeneity and complexity inside the infrastructure, there has to become a simple, single, unified way to protect, to recover, to manage, if you need disaster recovery or uptime. There has to be an easier way to do that than point products and like disperse multiple solutions. And I think that kind of leads into point 3, which is the API set. So we have seen a vast adoption of APIs, not just amongst our DevOps end users, but also it's starting to roll out into regular virtual admin, cloud admin, IT admins. They're all seeing the value in it, because with a simple set of instructions and automation utilities, you can really roll in a new application into an existing framework or infrastructure and have it operating much faster than you would be able to than going off and getting trained on a new UI or learning how the product works. So an API is crucial in sort of the modern space to be able to adopt a new application or backup and recovery software quickly and effectively.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. All right, coming up on one of our last points, what we're talking about is how can third parties actually augment the needs of your current strategy? We don't want to step on our CSP's toes. We want to augment what they're already offering with their native capabilities. So we have 4 different things that we're talking about here. Anthony, quickly walk me through why these 4 are important.
Yeah, so I know this is a little text heavy, so we'll just kind of read through it quickly. So lightweight instances for efficiency, cost optimization, cloud right sizing. That one's pretty standard on the nose. You have to have something that is elastic, it's flexible, and it's fast. And we totally see why folks would adopt that in the cloud. That's why we're also seeing that they expect that all of their data management solutions have to offer the same level of speed, efficiency, and performance. Ensuring cloud data is included in the central backup catalog. This is for organizations that have existed a little bit longer, or they're not just fully cloud native. They might have a little bit of a legacy going on, 10, 20 plus years of existing data infrastructure, hardware resources. They have to have something that can roll in the new along with the old and keep it centralized. That way you're not dispersing even more than you already are. Auto recognizing, that is just to say that there has to be an automatic way to protect things. One of the advantages of the cloud is speed. We've seen how fast you can deploy EC2 instances in Amazon or Azure compute resources. It is so fast to get so much so quick that there has to be an automatic way to recognize and to intelligently protect. So you're not just carte blanche protecting everything. You're protecting what matters and what's important. And lastly, leveraging cloud native options. That just means best in business. We know that the big 3 cloud providers, they offer really good resources and services when it comes to things like snapshot technology, built-in API integration. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel with what we're doing. Rather, we're trying to leverage and utilize what they already have to optimize for multi-cloud, for hybrid, to create one single fabric that will essentially cover the entire spectrum of clouds and on-prem to be able to create sort of a simplified, easy-to-use, flexible experience.
Yep. Thank you so much for that awesome explanation, Anthony. And again, this is a very quick kind of high-level overview of our Truth in Cloud report. If you'd like to see the full thing, if you go to veritas.com/cloud, you can find the full report there and dive in yourself. And we invite you to do that. This is a very high-level kind of overview, so please check it out for yourself. So we wanted to follow up with, as Veritas, us talking to you about what we found in this Truth in Cloud report, what are we actually delivering to help you out in the cloud? So we have a 4-pillar approach. Starting with prepare. We want to help you gain data visibility into your data and your infrastructure, and as well as integrated operations. We want to break down silos in your infrastructure and make sure that you get a unified end-to-end agnostic view of everything going on. And really, this is going to help optimize your decision-making when it comes to the cloud. When it comes to migration, we want dynamic application and data portability. This is flexibility to move to the cloud, from the cloud, and in between clouds. Flexibility is key when you're talking about a hybrid multi-cloud strategy. When it comes to protection, we want recovery across infrastructure and near zero downtime. You want to protect and recover all of your data regardless of where it resides to anywhere from anywhere. And then to follow up, we have Optimize, which is the flexibility to expand and avoid vendor lock-in. The journey to the cloud is never a one-way journey, so making sure that you can set that longer-term strategy. And this is offered by the Veritas Enterprise Data Services platform. Once again, more information about our cloud strategy and how we can help you in your hybrid multi-cloud journey and understanding the cloud to the best of your ability, visit veritas.com/cloud to get more information to follow up this webinar where we kind of went over everything at a high level. And with that, I believe we're at time. So I'd like to thank you so much on behalf of myself and Anthony for joining us today, and I'll pass it back to Sophie.
That was so great, Anthony and Brianna. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Had some really great feedback coming through about how interactive you were and how really dynamic it was. So thank you so much. Genuinely, it was really good. If we've got time for one more question, or just one question before we close off, that would be good. What can we do to change the perception of the cloud users that their cloud provider will be backing their data? Can you suggest a conversation that we can maybe have with them?
Definitely. I'll take that one. So what I've actually done in the past, and I've had conversations with our customers and then just folks we run into at conferences, is just ask them the question, is if you had an outage or if you had malware or some kind of ransomware on one of your instances in the cloud, how would you recover it and how far back can you go? And if they can't answer those questions, then they haven't considered what they actually have and what's working for them. Really get them to think about and run through those steps of recovery, because it's not just a matter of click and drag, copy, paste. It is an expansive process to get back data, and how would you recover it for an end user that needs it in an hour or in 30 minutes or 5 minutes?
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, I think we're out of time. So, but thank you again. Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for joining. It's really greatly appreciated, and I hope you enjoyed yourselves.
Yes, thanks for having us.
Thanks everyone.